You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 145, Making Maps. In today's episode, we discuss the different strategies for making maps. We discuss different types of maps you can generate. We also discuss some nice-to-haves and what makes a good map. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me virtually once again, I got Josh. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
Doing good. I'm doing good. You look a year older.
Oh, don't even. Yes,
that could be the plug that's running through your house, or it could be your birthday.
Oh yeah, everybody here is sick. It is a nightmare. That's why I'm isolating in my basement where I can sit here and talk to you, because everybody else is coughing and I don't want to deal with it.
The unfortunate thing is that we were scheduled to kind of come over and meet up with you guys, and it's just like, wah.
Well, I mean, this was inevitable. And it's not supposed to be, but like we went for a long weekend at a resort, and I came out unscathed, and my wife originally was unscathed, but my children are little plague rats, and they want to make friends with all of the other plague rats, and they brought something back with them.
So here you go. Here you are.
But sort of on topic for tonight, I was thinking about this while we were driving, is that we've sort of been robbed of a classic position of the American cross-country trip. And that position is the front seat navigator. Since we've got smartphones, and they tell us where to go and all that stuff, I am missing out on my navigator position. Somebody sitting next to me telling me, what roads to take and where I'm supposed to turn off.
Yeah, I mean, that back in the day with the map quest and all that good stuff going on there. It was always helpful to have that good old trusty map. And so if you haven't figured it out already, we're going to be talking about maps and making good ones. So Josh, you say that you make lots of maps.
I make a ridiculous number of maps. Well, and it's part and parcel to the way that I design my stories, or also just like fill in pre-made stories. I like to think of it like a family tree. Okay, you get the big ones at the top, and then everything else sort of filters out from it. Okay, and so I like to set up like a region map, or like this is my story, like it's within this area. And then I can go down, and if it is a fantasy spanning, multiple cities or, towns and stuff like that, I make those. I don't have to make super complicated maps. They don't have to be like extremely detailed. Here's, every single building, and here's the name of the people that owned them, and here's how the foundations were built, or anything like that. I just want to have a concept when I'm creating a story of, where in the world my players are going to be interacting and what they're going to encounter. And I think that planning it out when I'm planning a story, these overarching maps, these regional things, help sort of ground how I'm going to be moving my players around, what they're going to encounter, and helps me sort of develop the story.
Okay. No, I agree with the regional map. Every game I do, in a modern night sort of situation is I'll find some town or I'll take some city map and I will use that. And what we do is we drop pins on the map to mark locations that are of importance to the players. So it sort of keeps you from going like, well, this is the city of Seattle, and Seattle has like 1 million homes. So it's like I'm not going to draw 1 million maps because my players don't care about 99.9% of the city. They care about specific points within the city, and that's what the regional map helps give you the scope of what you're looking at, and then the homes help you. You can fill in the homes that you want to fill in effectively.
Well, and I think setting up pins in your map is one of the wonderful things about yes, if you got it on a tabletop, you're at a house, you bring out the cork board or whatnot, or have dry erase markers or even post-it notes. And when you're doing it on a VTT, what I've found is it's a lot of fun to actually just straight up put those pins in the map that are links to your other maps. And it's been very helpful for me. You don't have to necessarily share those with your players, but having the pins on there so that they can take notes of where things are and you can see where things are on the map. Like, okay, they're going to this place, open up this other map. And I do encourage my players to take notes actually on the map or in the virtual tabletop, because then they've got sort of their own sense of that region or that city, and their notes are going to be more about what they remember rather than what I want them to remember, because players will remember what they are. They're not you.
That is very true. Players are not you. They do not think like you do, which is the difficulty when you are telling a story and trying to guide your players to a solution within a story. Because the players will not solve it the way that you thought you were going to solve it. And this is, that's a whole different topic about railroading. And that's typically what ends up happening if you are not flexible into trying to figure things out the way your players want to. But you are right that being able to take notes, the nice thing about having the VTT and the maps is that the players can take notes about specific maps. I have found that sometimes that stuff can get jumbled, which is you thought you took a note somewhere in the VTT and now you can't find the note anymore. A solution to that is outside of the map thing is to just give your players like a notepad in the VTT that they take all their notes in, or a shared notepad that they can kind of confer upon. But the being able to actually see it, write information about the maps, we do this too. We basically create the maps as characters in Roll20, and then we allow the players editing access to the maps. So you can write things like unimportant or where we should go here and talk to so and so. We can write down important details about the map, something that we find interesting on there. And again, note taking is a whole different subject that we could talk about in and of itself, but the concept of being able to look at the map, being able to write, and being able to refer to direct things about it, like especially if you're looking at like a region map or something like that, you have pins that mark different parts of the region. You might be like, oh, they speak this dialect and they have this information and blah 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 blah. And so like your players can think about that before they go there. It really depends on the kind of story you're telling too, which allows you to be able to do more with those maps in a VTT type world, and even outside of a VTT, just really nice to be able to do.
Yeah. Well, and I know recently we talked about improving upon a mystery, and one of the things that I brought up in there was that when you are sort of planning it out, if the mystery is your story, you need to be able to move your players around your map, and you definitely need to have sort of a design of what that area is. And that works with not just mysteries, but that works with adventures, that works with just your average everyday storytelling session. You need to have some sort of plan of where your players are going to go and what they're going to see. And I think setting up, some overview maps are really useful for that case. Now, there are additional types of maps, and I make these as well. Um, I like to think of them as tiers, and you've got your region or your city. That's your sort of your character. You're not going to be putting tokens on them necessarily, except to like I'm in this city and I'm moving to this city sort of thing. They're more just handouts to your players. They are a conceptual idea that your players are going to use uh, to understand the world or the story that you're telling. And they really should. They need to be um, a tool that explains the world, that sort of helps tell the story, that sets the tone of things. Um, because that's what your players are going to be looking at, and they're going to get the inspiration for the type of story it is from that view. But when you drill down into not just a city, but like a dungeon or a building or an encounter on the streets or in the woods or in a cave, those sort of things are their own type of maps. And those are the ones that you're going to actually have player tokens on. And they need to be just as focused on telling the story and the world that you're presenting. And I like to go through, when I'm building a story, I like to go through and plan the overview of the story and then build some of these other maps, these other the maps that are actually going to have encounters on them, or they're going to be, dungeon crawls or whatnot. And then once I've built them, go back and sort of refine the story to sort of fit into that, so that you've got them working together, sort of a synergy thing going on.
It's a good way to put it. I mean, I think the most important thing about creating maps, and whether or not you use them or you don't, have played in games that are total theater of the mind, which is perfectly fine. That's super map light, that basically you don't have maps at all. Or you play, I've played in games where there's almost a map for everything that you do, meaning that the GM has painstakingly thought through almost every encounter that you're going to go into, and has been able to put all the detail and effort into creating all these maps. And even in the world of creating just a bunch of random maps, this is a add-on from, like, if you're heavier on the map side of things, is an add-on to an older NPC episode that I did, or that we did ages back. The really important thing is that your players will start to realize that the only important things are on maps that you've already done. Okay. And so if you are heavy on maps, have some backup maps that can fill in some gaps here and there. They might not make the most sense, but at least they are a finished map that it is extra work that you sort of need to do to be able to sort of trick your players into going like, yes, I did have a map for this random house that you thought I wasn't going to have a map for. Okay. And again, if they just jump into a random house, maybe you don't need a map for that. But like, if your players say, I'm going to go to this location within the city because you've given me information and I believe that there is other important information there, you might scramble and go, crap, I don't have a map for that place because I didn't think the players were ever going to go there. And being able to kind of pull the wool over your players' eyes makes the illusion that every place within the city, every map that you convey to them, has importance. So keep that in mind. Just kind of generally, you can do that with NPCs, you can do that with maps, information, other things that you have to give the players. I think it's important to make sure that the maps make sense for the story that you're telling. So don't go out and pick a bunch of starship battle maps and throw them into your D&D game, because they won't mesh. Okay, like it doesn't matter. Like if well, this has a good layout. Like I think it might. No. It's
That sounds awesome. What are you talking about? I want to have my wizard fighting through an Imperial dreadnought in space. That sounds great.
So
no,
yeah.
I get it. It is like we said. It should be in concert with the story. You should have maps if you're going to have them, that help tell the story, that fit within the mood of the story, that fit within the um, just the whole concept of what story you're telling. And they should be helping your story move forward. They should be helping your players understand what's going on. Yes, you can have a bunch of like random maps for random encounters. And I have used this trick before where the players decide they're going to go to a place that I don't have mapped out and it's going to be, important. And so I will have them run into a random encounter along the way.
You'll sketch out a map real quick before they get there.
I generally have like random encounter stuff, but I will I'm looking at the time. Okay, we're going to have an encounter that lasts 30 or 40 minutes and then the session is over and that'll give me a week to build a new map. But don't rely on that because that is like just playing by the skin of your teeth.
Every time we want to go somewhere, we keep running to the same band of orcs.
Well, you know what? Then they've got a new enemy that they track down and fight, and they're like, "Oh, we were distracted, so we went after the orcs instead." Yeah, great, because I didn't have the map done yet.
Who are these map bandits, and why do they keep attacking?
They're okay, but there are good reasons not to have maps. Also,
yes, yeah, I agree.
Like you should have maps that push your story forward, or that for encounters when you're going to actually need your players on the field, or to like sort of demonstrate where they are in the world. But at the same time, I try to avoid maps, and it's really knowing your players. But I try to avoid maps when I don't want them to start a fight.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I've got a lot of players that are keen on the action, and they see a map, and they're like, okay, that means action. And if you've built a thing because, hey, we should have a social encounter, but if things happen or if something happens, then have your social encounter, and if something happens, bring the map out then. You don't need to show a map as soon as the players enter the area. You can use it as a backup in case a firefight happens. But that's once again, that's knowing your players. Sometimes they just want to explore the area and they think that's fun. If you make good maps, your players want to see them.
Yeah, I mean, again, the maps are conveying information. So if you're worried that your players are going to start looking at them and going and licking their chops, going, that barrel's going to make great cover, and I'm going to fire fireballs from behind that barrel. Oh my God, this is going to be great. I'm going to rain fire everywhere. Like, you don't want to have a map. like, because a barrel might be a staple in a map, and it's not there for cover, but your player just might think, oh man, that's going to be such a great time.
And also, if you've got an encounter, like a social encounter, like you're meeting up with a guy, and he's got some information, and depending on how your players play the situation, it could go, they could convince the person to do it, or they could go in guns blazing and cause trouble. And yeah, that's an option that players should have, because you don't want to constrain them to being like, no, the only way to get this information is to convince this guy or to bribe him or whatnot. No, you if they want to go intimidation and violence, that's up to them. That's the type of player, experience that they're looking for or what they expect out of this. But if you put them into a situation where they see a map, they expect a fight, and you're like, okay, now have a social situation with this guy. They're like, no, it's a fight. We know it's a fight. So maybe hold off on the map until they get to the part where they've decided to fight.
I mean, we in most of Jared's games, we become more acquainted to the idea of having a ton of maps. And a lot of the stuff is that, like, if he doesn't... I did this in a game that I ran more recently for them, which was I didn't have very many maps. I would just draw maps as necessary. And so going back to the good old just whiteboarding on a map real quick is very helpful to be able to just kind of understand positioning, because even if you have players who are pretty heady and they're not going to start a fight, knowing where your exits are, knowing where things are kind of laid out, it's good for conveying information if you're searching a place, to kind of grasp the idea of like, well, I've already searched that room. Is there anything important in that room? What is that room? Even if you don't have like the sconces picked out, I mean, like you at least have an idea of how the place is laid out. So it's easy to kind of conceptually see like where things are, who's doing what, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that's another thing is, don't be afraid to map on the fly or throw out a map as a necessary, especially if players aren't getting it. Like if you're describing an inn and the players can't visualize it, throw out the map so you'd be like, this is what the inn looks like that I'm trying to describe, and apparently I can't do a good job.
Well, and that's sort of the reason why I like having maps. I pre-make a lot of maps, even for places that may not have an encounter, because I can put that up on my screen and be like, it is a visual reference for me to describe it to a player, and that can be useful also. But yeah, making a map on the fly, if you need to, that's a great idea. Just to be able to sketch something up, have the resources to do that. I'm trying to think. Okay, I was going to say other reasons why not to, when you might not want to have a map. One of the things that I've run into a couple of times is chases, or moving from scene to scene quickly.
Chases suck.
They do. I'm looking at part of my cyberpunk story will probably have some road chases and possibly even some racing going on. So that's going to be fun. And the way that I'm planning this is less of using a map and possibly just using a flow chart, sort of putting the players in positions on a chart for my sort of edification, and they're going to have to sort of theater of the mind what's going on, because I'm not making 6 miles of map. That's ridiculous. But having sort of a concept of where they are, or even putting up just the vehicles that they're in so that they can sort of see their relative position inside of a vehicle, that's one thing. But
when you actually do run this supposed chase, you'll have to let me know how you went about it, because typically what they tend to devolve into is, okay, roll your dice. All right, you're still like quite far behind them because they rolled better than you. Okay, let's roll our dice again. All right, okay, they're still, you're really not gaining on them because I don't know why, you're just not doing it. Okay, roll our dice again. Okay, we're gonna do this for like 20 minutes, and you're not gonna catch the guy. Or
I'm trying to avoid that and go more with the run and gun, so that the car is moving, the vehicles are moving, and
so it's vehicle combat with the aspect of distance between the cars.
Yeah, and using the dice rolls to be like finding shortcuts, or making sure they're tracking the person properly, or are you hidden if they're trying to do a tail, stuff like that, to avoid that whole you just didn't roll good enough, so you lost them sort of thing. Give them opportunities, but that's its own thing. And that's going to be a whole pain in the butt to set up and run. But I think it's sort of necessary for the story I'm trying to tell.
But yes, it doesn't make for a good place to make a map, because obviously your map is only runs so far, and so how long do you can't predict how long the chase is going to last, or the combat is going to last. That's moving and flowing, and so the idea of a floor chart, let me know how that works.
I've done it before, and it worked really well in a fantasy city chase, like along rooftops and stuff like that. because I had placed out parts of my encounter, like it's going to be rooftops, then it's going to be a park, and then you're going to they could split off either into the market or into the church, and so I built a flow chart of how the chase could go, and let them continue using that as opposed to individual maps for each one of these things. So I thought that went really well, and I'm looking forward to trying it again. Another time that I try to avoid maps is when the world or the area that you're telling the story about is physically changing. Now, this is sort of a situational thing, but I have run into like large encounters where, a city is burning, or a building is, crumbling or whatnot. And it's just a pain in the butt to have like multiple stages, or things that are like breaking down or moving while it's going on. You can sort of plan out beforehand and maybe do a plan out afterwards. But during the middle of it, you're switching up maps, and it can be just you're spending more time fiddling with the maps than you are telling the story.
If you're going to do something like that, Jared did this well in a game that he ran. The entire game was based upon basically a giant encounter map, like combat against like 40 people. So like it started in one area, a fire was lit at part of it, something started burning, and so like the fire kept spreading every turn. And so he was doing that with like different symbols, and he had worked out how he was going to like block things off, and he had really thought through how the map was going to change and manipulate. The problem with a large map, problem with large encounter, same thing there. If you are moving pieces around, and you've got like 40 of them, you've got 6 players, you better know how those pieces are going to move before you start moving them around, because it is arduous and boring to wait as your GM's like, hold on a second. Just wait one more second. Okay, just I'm almost done. Okay, yeah. I got 13 more of these to go. Hold on.
Well, we've said it before. We'll say it again. The downtime between turns, between actions, is possibly the worst part of any tabletop RPG.
Yes.
It's, just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And when you've got, a big map with a lot of things going on, and it's getting real fiddly, that can just, maybe it's pretty, but oof. If you do have something like Jared did, where you've got, a fire and you plan the whole thing out, I like to do those smaller. I don't like doing a big one, because then you've got, it would be its own action. You've got a plan for it. But
the other thing that you could do is only move things that the players can see. That'd be my advice for you, because the rest of the world might be changing, but the players don't know it. And so they don't care to wait for you to change the rest of the world. So change what's in front of them, and then as they encounter other parts of the map, that's when things have, changed for the better or worse.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to the last one that I've got listed here, is that don't make a map, or like you might have your own map, but don't share it with your players if the map has spoilers in it. If, because the players are coming into a new area, maybe they don't know what's going on there, they don't know the layout of things. They need to sort of scout before they get to find out what's going on. Or if
you can't just put the spoiler tag on it and just be like, don't click that if you don't want to see the spoiler.
Well, yeah, that's I don't think that's how that works. And there's the whole fog of war on VTTs, where you can sort of hide things that your players have not seen or encountered. But there's still information that your players can get from just the size of the map, or how much is blocked out or what's going on around it. And sometimes it's better to feed it to them in bits and pieces so that you can tell the story that you're looking for. And that's all I'm saying here is that your maps should be helping you tell a story. They're not there just to be encounters. They're not there just to be, pretty things to make your players look at while you're doing something else, getting things ready. Your maps should be helping you tell your story.
They're conveying the bits of your story that you're trying to express to your players. They're conveying more information than you could just simply do by expressing it to your players. Your players can now visualize exactly what you mean or exactly what you're trying to explain to them by looking at the map. So that's that's the key to them, that helps them move around, that helps them tactically think about things. It helps them to visually think about like, maybe that drawer is important. Why is that door locked? There's all sorts of things that come about. Or, boy, there's a bunch of ruffians in here, and those barrels really look good for lobbing fireballs from. Always some barrels.
Like crates personally, but each their own.
Or man, I can steal that sconce. I mean, it's could be pretty valuable. Anyways,
sounds like a good time.
They are there to be a tool to you, to be able to tell your story better than than without them. And again, they're not the end all be all, because I know that some people don't use maps. I know some people don't want to use maps or don't want to invest the time in creating a bunch of maps. And beyond the convenience for like a battle board, they're pretty optional, but they do add a lot of flavor, and they do make things nice in some cases to be able to convey information. So that's what I'll say about it.
Yeah. I think that if you are opposed to making maps, like for individual fights or for dungeons and stuff like that, you're not a map person. I still think it's a useful tool to sketch out sort of a region or area map. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be anything you share with your players. It is purely to help you make sure that your story has the stuff that you're looking for. And you can put in your little, you can put in notes, put your story beats on it. You can sort of plan out how the story is going to proceed using it. And it is a very useful tool to make your story seem more real, fit into sort of that world. And it helps sort of convey the concept of the world that you're trying to tell your players, even if they don't see it, because you've built that thing, because you have that sort of in your brain when you're designing it. It helps ground things a little bit.
The region map is really nice because the region map is also kind of like the theme park map. Okay. It's really does sort of convey the natural borders of your game, which is, if it's not on the region map, I probably don't care about it in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be anywhere on the region map, and you might add another ancillary part to the region map, but as long as your players can see it, that also helps really kind of put together the concept. One, conceptualize distances, and then two, be able to conceptualize, what's important to me within the context of this story. So,
yeah. Well,
anything else you want to add to this one, Josh? Because we could go into the types of maps, but I think that maybe that will go into another conversation that we'll have about maps in the future, which is how to build the really effective maps. Right.
Yeah.
So.
There's a lot of good advice out there, and there's a lot of things that I've learned in making my maps on how to make an effective encounter or dungeon building map. And I think that going over that and talking about it was a good idea, but that could last like I'm thinking a whole episode's worth of information.
So we'll come back to you with more information on maps. We'll
Ooh.
get to we'll map it out for you. Ha 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 ha.
Don't do that.
We'll put it on the roadmap for the podcast. Okay. Okay.
No.
Oh, what have I done? Okay. So anyway,
Those dad jokes are getting to you
yeah,
now,
they're getting to me. Yeah, I'm practicing for when she gets older. When you if you have thoughts on maps or making maps, how you utilize maps, let us know. levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Also, the podcast is on YouTube, so smash the like button there, subscribe to the podcast, in your favorite podcast site, review it, recommend it to a friend, all that other good stuff. And that is going to wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.